Malcolm X, a story of courage, change, and the gift of freedom. The death of George Floyd has sparked ongoing protests and riots across the United States. Curfews have been imposed in many cities, yet they have failed to halt the violence. Demonstrations have escalated into looting, vandalism, and arson in numerous locations, lasting until the early hours of Sunday morning local time. According to a report by CNN, curfews have been implemented in 25 cities across at least 16 states, and the National Guard has been activated in more than a dozen states, in addition to Minneapolis, where the George Floyd incident originated. Cities such as Los Angeles, Miami, Chicago, Seattle, and Philadelphia have also imposed curfews. San Francisco is set to begin its curfew on the evening of the 31st local time. However, riots persisted in many areas on Saturday night local time. Stores were looted, cars were set on fire, and buildings were damaged, with riot police using rubber bullets and tear gas to regain control. In the wake of this turmoil, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the anger and chaos swirling around us. But tonight, my dear, we turn away from the noise for a moment, not to ignore the pain, but to find hope in a story that echoes the very longing for justice we see today. This is a story of a man who once stood where these protesters stand, who felt the same anger, the same pain, the same unyielding desire for a fairer world. A story of courage, of change, and of the enduring fight for freedom that has echoed through generations of Black Americans. Let us retreat together to a quiet place, a place of warmth and comfort, and tell the story of Malcolm X, a man who dared to fight, dared to change, and dared to believe that a better world was possible. This is a quiet night. The moon hangs low in the sky, like a soft lantern shining through the window, and the world outside has sunk into a gentle silence. No loud noises, no hurried footsteps, only the soft rustle of leaves and the steady rhythm of your own breath. Close your eyes, my baby. Let your body relax into the warmth of your bed, and let our words carry you back in time, to a place where courage was born from struggle and hope grew from darkness. Breathe in the scent of your favorite blanket, feel the softness of your pillow beneath your head, and know that you are safe, you are loved, and this story is just for you. We will take our time, my dear, no rush, no hurry, just gentle words and a journey through time, together. This is a quiet night, my dear. The moon hangs low in the sky, like a soft lantern shining through the window, and the world outside has sunk into a gentle silence. No loud noises, no hurried footsteps, only the soft rustle of leaves and the steady rhythm of your own breath. Close your eyes, my baby. Let your body relax into the warmth of your bed, and let our words carry you back in time, to a place where courage was born from struggle and hope grew from darkness. Breathe in the scent of your favorite blanket, feel the softness of your pillow beneath your head, and know that you are safe, you are loved, and this story is just for you. We will take our time, my dear, no rush, no hurry, just gentle words and a journey through time. Together, breathe in deeply and breathe out slow. Feel the calm wrap around you like a cozy blanket. Now, close your eyes and go back. Go back to the year 1925, to a small city called Omaha, in the state of Nebraska, USA. The air there smells of fresh grass and wood smoke, of homemade bread baking in the kitchens of small houses, and of the dust that blows across the plains on warm summer days. The streets are lined with wooden houses, their porches decorated with potted flowers and rocking chairs, where families sit in the evenings to escape the heat, women fanning themselves with paper fans, men talking about the day's work, children chasing fireflies that glow like tiny stars in the dusk. The sound of children laughing echoes down the sidewalks, and the clip-clop of horse-drawn carriages mixes with the chatter of neighbors greeting each other, the tinkle of an ice cream vendor's bell, and the distant bark of a dog. The houses have sloped roofs and screen doors that creak when you open them, and the yards are filled with tomato plants, sunflowers, and clotheslines strung with freshly washed sheets that flutter in the breeze. But in this quiet city, not everything is as gentle as the summer breeze, my dear. There is a shadow hanging over the lives of the black families who live there, a shadow called racism, thick and heavy, like a storm cloud that never fully passes. You see, in 1925, the world was not kind to black people. They were not allowed to sit in the same schools as white children, not allowed to eat in the same restaurants, not allowed to drink from the same water fountains. Signs that read whites only hung in store windows, in parks, in movie theaters, a constant reminder that they were not welcome, that they were not equal. They were called cruel names, pushed aside on the sidewalks, and treated as if they were less than human. This was a world where the color of your skin determined where you could go, what you could do, and even how much respect you would be given. A black child could not play in the same park as a white child. A black woman could not sit in the front of a streetcar. A black man could not get a good job, no matter how hard he worked. It was a world of separation, of unfairness, of pain, and it was the world that Malcolm Little was born into. In this world, a little boy was born on May 19, 1925. His name was Malcolm Little, and he was the fourth of 7 children, 3 boys and 4 girls, all crammed into a small wooden house on a quiet street in Omaha. His father, Earl Little, was a tall, proud man with a loud voice and a big heart, his skin dark as mahogany, his eyes bright with fire and determination. Earl was a Baptist preacher, but he was also a fighter. He believed that black people deserved to be free, to be proud of who they were, and to stand up for themselves, even when it was dangerous. He followed the teachings of Marcus Garvey, a man who told black people to love their own race, to support each other, and to build a better life for themselves, without depending on white people. Earl would gather his children around him every evening, after dinner, sitting in the rocking chair on the porch, and tell them stories of black strength, stories of men and women who had fought against slavery, who had refused to be beaten down, who had stood tall in the face of cruelty. He would hold Malcolm's hand and say, "You are not inferior, my son. You are strong, you are smart, you are worthy, and you must never let anyone make you feel small. We are black, and we are proud." Malcolm's mother, Louise, was a kind and hard-working woman, her skin a warm brown, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, her hands rough from years of cooking, cleaning, and sewing. She was born in Grenada, a small island in the Caribbean, where the sun shines bright and the ocean is a deep blue, and she brought with her the warmth of her homeland, the sound of calypso music she would hum while she worked, the taste of spicy stews she would cook for her family, the kindness that made everyone who knew her feel welcome. She cooked delicious meals for her family, sewed their clothes by hand, stitching patches on the knees of Malcolm's overalls, hemming his sister's dresses, and tried her best to keep their home a safe and happy place, even when the world outside was cruel. But Louise worried. my dear. She worried about her husband, who spoke so openly against racism, who did not hide his beliefs, who was always at risk of being hurt by white racists. She worried about her children, who would grow up in a world that judged them for the color of their skin, who would face cruelty and unfairness every day. At night, when the children were asleep, she would sit by the window, watching the moon, and pray for their safety, for a better world. Malcolm was a curious little boy, with bright eyes that sparkled like stars, a quick mind that loved to ask questions, and a smile that could light up a room. He loved to listen to his father's stories, sitting on his lap, hanging on every word, asking, "Daddy, did that really happen? Daddy, will we ever be free?" He loved to run through the fields near their house, chasing butterflies, picking wildflowers, and playing with his brothers and sisters, racing them to the old oak tree at the end of the field, building forts out of sticks and leaves, laughing until their sides hurt. But even as a young child, he could feel the unfairness around him. He noticed that white children could go to nicer schools, schools with new books, clean classrooms, and playgrounds with swings and slides, while black children went to small, run-down schools with broken desks and no books. He noticed that white children could walk into any store without being stared at, without being treated like they didn't belong, while he and his siblings were often followed by store clerks who thought they might steal. He noticed that his father had to be careful when he spoke to white people, that he had to keep his voice calm, even when they were cruel to him. He would ask his father, "Daddy, why are we treated differently?" And Earl would hug him tight, his arms strong and warm, and say, "Because the world is not yet fair, my son. But we will fight to make it fair. We will stand tall, and we will be proud. And one day, things will change." But tragedy came early to Malcolm's life, my dear. When he was only 6 years old, his father died. The official story said that Earl was hit by a streetcar, that it was an accident, a terrible mistake. But Louise knew better. She believed that he was killed by a group of white racists called the Black Legion, a violent group that hated black people, that hated anyone who stood up for black rights, that wanted to keep black people down. The Black Legion had threatened Earl before, had burned crosses on their lawn, had sent him hate mail, but Earl had refused to be silent. The rumors swirled around the neighborhood. Neighbors whispered that they had seen white men near their house the night Earl died, that they had heard shouting, that they had seen a car speeding away. Malcolm, a small, vulnerable boy, felt lost and scared. He did not understand why someone would want to hurt his father, why someone would hate them so much just because of the color of their skin. He would sit on the porch, where his father used to sit, and cry, calling out for him, waiting for him to come home. He felt like a part of him was gone, like the light in his life had been snuffed out. After Earl's death, life became hard for Malcolm's family, harder than they could have ever imagined. Louise tried her best to take care of her 7 children, but money was tight, so tight that they often went without food, without new clothes, without the things other children took for granted. She applied for a welfare check, just enough to keep food on the table, just enough to keep a roof over their heads, but the people who gave out the money refused to pay, saying that Earl had killed himself, that he had taken his own life because he was desperate. Louise fought back, my dear. She wrote letters, she went to meetings, she stood up for herself and her children, even when it was scary. She told them, "Your father did not kill himself. He was killed because he stood up for what was right, and I will not let them dishonor his memory." Eventually, she got the check, only $18 a month, which would be about $16,000 today, barely enough to feed 7 children. To make ends meet, she rented out part of their garden to a neighbor, a kind old man who grew vegetables and paid her a little money each month. Malcolm and his brothers started hunting for food, grabbing their small rifles and heading into the fields to catch rabbits and squirrels, which Louise would cook for dinner. It was a hard life, cold nights without enough blankets, days without enough to eat, clothes that were too small and full of holes. But Louise never gave up, and she never let her children forget their father's teachings. She would tell them, "Your father was a brave man. He fought for us, and now we must fight for ourselves. We must be proud, we must be strong, and we must never give up hope." This is the first little story within our story, my dear, a story of a young girl named Ella, who lived next door to the little family. Ella was the same age as Malcolm, 6 years old, with curly black hair and a smile as bright as Malcolm's. They would play together in the fields behind their houses every day after school, running through the grass, picking daisies, and talking about their dreams. Ella's father, Mr. Carter, was a carpenter, a skilled man who could build anything: tables, chairs, houses, even toys. He would spend his days working in a small workshop in his backyard, the sound of his hammer tapping echoing through the neighborhood. He would make wooden toys for Ella and Malcolm, little cars with wheels that turned, dolls with cloth dresses, and boats that could float in the small stream at the edge of the field. Malcolm loved those toys, especially the boat. He would take it to the stream every afternoon, watching it float, imagining he was sailing to a faraway place where everyone was equal, where no one was treated differently. But one day, everything changed. Mr. Carter went to work at a construction site in downtown Omaha, where he was hired to build a new office building. The white carpenters there were paid $5 a day, but Mr. Carter was only offered $3 a day, just because he was black. The foreman told him, "You're black, so you don't deserve as much. Take it or leave it." Mr. Carter refused. He said, "I work just as hard as the white men here. I deserve the same pay. I would rather be poor than be treated like I am worth less." He walked off the job, and he never got another carpentry job in Omaha again. Ella was sad. She saw her father sitting in the workshop, staring at his tools, looking tired and hopeless. She cried and said, "Daddy, why can't we be treated fairly?" Mr. Carter hugged her and said, "I don't know, baby, but we must never let them make us feel small. We must be proud." That afternoon, Ella went to Malcolm's house, her eyes red from crying. Malcolm saw her sadness, and he took her hand, leading her to the stream where they played with their boat. He told her, "My daddy said we have to be proud, Ella. We have to stand up for ourselves, even when it's hard. We have to believe that things will get better." That day, the two children made a promise to each other. They would never let anyone make them feel small, never let anyone take away their pride, never give up hope that one day, the world would be fair. As Malcolm grew older, the world became even crueler crueler than he could have imagined as a small child. He watched as his mother struggled to keep their family together, working day and night, her hands getting rougher, her face growing tired, but never losing her kindness. He watched as his brothers and sisters went hungry, as they wore clothes that were too small, as they had to drop out of school to help support the family. He watched as white people called him terrible names, names that hurt, names that made him feel small and worthless, as they pushed him around on the sidewalks, as they refused to let him enter stores, as they treated him like he was nothing. He began to lose faith in the world, in the goodness of people. He stopped going to church, stopped listening to his father's teachings. He thought, if the world was this cruel, if God allowed this unfairness, then what was the point? He started running with the wrong crowd, boys who skipped school, who stole things, who got into fights. He joined a gang called the Gremlins, and he started stealing from stores, breaking into houses, and getting into trouble with the police. He thought that if the world was cruel to him, he would be cruel back. He felt angry, lost, and alone, like no one cared about him, like no one understood his pain. He dropped out of school in the 8th grade, telling his teachers that he didn't care about learning, that he didn't care about anything anymore. But deep down, my dear, he was hurt, hurt by the loss of his father, hurt by the unfairness of the world, hurt by the fact that he felt like he had no place to belong. When Malcolm was 20 years old, he was arrested and sent to prison. The prison was a dark, cold place, with stone walls that seemed to go on forever, iron bars that clanged shut every night, and the smell of fear and despair in the air. The cells were small, barely big enough for a bed and a toilet, and the lights were on all night, so you could never truly sleep. At first, Malcolm was angry and bitter, angry at the world, angry at himself, angry that he had let his pain and anger take over his life. He refused to read, refused to talk to anyone, and spent his days staring at the walls, thinking about all the mistakes he had made, all the pain he had caused. He felt like he was trapped, like there was no way out, like he would spend the rest of his life in that dark cell. But then, a man in the cell next to him, a man named Bimbi, gave him a book. Bimbi was an older man, with grey hair and a kind face, who had been in prison for many years. He was quiet, but he was wise, and he saw something in Malcolm, something good, something worth saving. "Read this," Bimbi said, sliding the book through the bars. "It will open your eyes. It will give you hope. It will show you that there is more to life than this cell, than your anger, than your pain." Malcolm was hesitant at first. He hadn't read a book since he dropped out of school, and he didn't think it would change anything. But he took the book, a book about Black history, and he started to read. And once he started, he could not stop. He read books about history, about Black people who had fought for freedom, about Frederick Douglass, who had escaped slavery and become a powerful speaker, about Harriet Tubman, who had led hundreds of slaves to freedom through the Underground Railroad, about Sojourner Truth, who had spoken out for equality for Black people and for women. He read about the world beyond the prison walls, about different countries, different cultures, different ways of life. He read about Islam, a religion that taught equality, that said all people, no matter their race, their gender, their background, were equal in the eyes of God. He read about the Nation of Islam, a group of Black Muslims who believed that Black people were the chosen ones, that white people were evil, that black people had been oppressed by white people for hundreds of years, and that black people should separate themselves from white people to be free. This spoke to Malcolm's anger, to his pain, to the feeling that he had been wronged by the white world. It made sense to him. All the cruelty he had faced, all the unfairness, all the pain, it was because white people were evil, because they wanted to keep black people down. For the first time in years, he felt like he had found something to believe in, something that gave him purpose, something that made him feel like he was not alone in prison. Malcolm changed, slowly, day by day, like a seed growing into a tree. He stopped being angry and bitter, and he started to feel purpose. He stopped wasting his days staring at the walls, and he started reading every book he could get his hands on. History books, religious books, books about philosophy, books about politics. He taught himself to read better, to write better, to think critically. He started writing letters to the Nation of Islam, asking questions, learning more about their teachings, and soon, he became a follower. He changed his name from Malcolm Little to Malcolm X, because Little was the name given to his family by the white slave owners who had once owned their ancestors, a name that symbolized oppression, a name that he refused to carry any longer. The X stood for his true identity, the identity that had been taken from him, the identity he would now reclaim, the identity of a proud black man, free from the chains of slavery and racism. He dedicated himself to the Nation of Islam, to their teachings, and to the idea that black people could be free if they stood together, if they were proud of who they were, if they refused to be pushed around. He knew that when he got out of prison, he would dedicate his life to spreading this message, to helping black people find their pride, to fighting for their freedom. This is the second little story within our story, my dear, a story of a man named Joseph, who was in prison with Malcolm. Joseph was an older man, with gray hair and kind eyes, his face lined with wrinkles that told stories of a hard life. He had been in prison for 15 years, convicted of a crime he did not commit. He had been accused of stealing money from a white man's store, even though he had been at home with his family that night. But because he was black, no one believed him, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Joseph had never lost his hope, though. He read books, he prayed, he talked to the other prisoners, and he tried to help those who were lost and angry, just like Malcolm. He would talk to Malcolm about his life, about how he had once been a farmer, growing cotton and corn on a small farm in Mississippi, about how he had a wife and 2 children who were waiting for him to come home. He told Malcolm about how he had been arrested for standing up to a white man who had stolen his land that had been in his family for generations. The white man had come to his farm, claiming the land was his, and when Joseph refused to leave, the man called the police, who arrested Joseph and charged him with theft. Joseph told Malcolm, "Anger is a fire, my boy. It can burn you up, or it can warm you. Use it to fuel your courage, not your hatred. I have been angry too, angry at the unfairness, angry at the people who put me here, angry at the world. But anger alone won't change anything. You have to channel that anger into something good, into something that will help others. You have a voice, Malcolm. Use it to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. Use it to fight for justice. Use it to make the world a better place." Malcolm listened to Joseph, and those words stayed with him, like a seed planted in his heart, growing stronger every day. He realized that his anger was not a weakness, it was a strength he could use to fight for change, a strength he could use to help other black people. He started to see that hatred was not the answer, that hatred would only make the world more cruel, more divided. He started to see that he could use his pain, his anger, his experiences to help others, to give them hope. When Malcolm was released from prison, after serving 7 years, he went to work for the Nation of Islam. He moved to Detroit, where the Nation of Islam had a large following, and he started working with Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the group. Malcolm was a powerful speaker. His voice was strong, deep, and full of passion, his words sharp and clear, and he spoke with a conviction that made people listen. He had a way of connecting with people, of making them feel seen and heard, of making them feel like they mattered. He would talk about his own experiences, growing up without a father, living in poverty, being arrested, being in prison, and people would relate to him, would see themselves in his story. He traveled across the country, giving speeches in churches, in community centers, in parks, anywhere people would listen. He told black people to be proud of their race, to stand up for themselves, to reject the idea that they were inferior. He told them that they did not need to beg white people for respect. They could take it by any means necessary. He told them that black people were strong, were smart, were worthy, and that they deserved to be free. His speeches inspired thousands of black people who felt seen and heard for the first time, people who had been pushed down, who had been made to feel small, who had lost hope. They looked up to him, they followed him, they called him Malcolm X, and they saw him as a leader, a hero, a voice for the voiceless. Malcolm traveled to cities like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and everywhere he went, crowds would gather to hear him speak, crowds of black men, women, and children, all hungry for hope, all hungry for change. Malcolm met a woman named Betty Dean Sanders, a kind and strong woman who shared his beliefs, who was also a follower of the Nation of Islam. Betty was a beautiful woman, with dark skin and curly hair, and a heart full of kindness and courage. She had grown up in Detroit, and she had dedicated her life to helping black people, to fighting for equality. She and Malcolm met at a Nation of Islam meeting, and they immediately connected. They talked for hours about their beliefs, about their dreams, about the kind of world they wanted to build. They fell in love, slowly and deeply, and they got married in 1958. Together, they had 6 beautiful daughters, Atala, Kubala, Ilyasa, Gamila, Malika, and Malak. Betty was his rock, his support, his partner in everything. She stood by him through the good times and the bad, through the threats and the criticism, through the moments of doubt and fear. She helped him spread the message of the Nation of Islam. She took care of their family while he traveled, and she encouraged him to keep going, even when things were hard. Malcolm loved Betty more than anything, and he loved his daughters. He would spend time with them whenever he could, playing with them, reading to them, telling them stories about courage and pride. He wanted them to grow up in a world where they were treated fairly, where they were proud of who they were, where they never had to face the cruelty he had faced as a child. But as time went on, Malcolm began to have doubts about the Nation of Islam, doubts about their teachings, doubts about whether their message was truly the right one. He started to question the idea that all white people were evil. He met white people who were kind, who supported the fight for equality, who wanted to help black people. white people who marched with black people, who spoke out against racism, who risked their own safety to stand up for what was right. He met white journalists who wanted to tell his story, who wanted to help spread his message of pride and freedom. He met white scholars who studied black history, who understood the pain and unfairness that black people had faced. He realized that racism was not just about white people hating black people. It was about a system that was unfair, a system that kept black people down, a system that had been built on slavery and oppression. He realized that there were good white people and bad white people, just like there were good black people and bad black people. He began to disagree with the leader of the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, who he felt was not telling the whole truth, who was using the movement for his own gain, who was not truly committed to helping black people. Elijah Muhammad had told Malcolm that the Nation of Islam was the only way for black people to be free, but Malcolm started to see that there were other ways, that unity, not separation, was the key to change. In 1963, something terrible happened, something that shook the entire nation. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, on November 22nd. The nation was in shock, in mourning. People cried, they prayed, they gathered together to grieve the loss of their president. But Malcolm made a statement that shocked the nation. He said that Kennedy's death was chickens coming home to roost, meaning that the violence and cruelty that white people had inflicted on black people for years had finally come back to them, that white people had sown violence, and now they were reaping it. The nation was outraged. White people were angry, black people were divided, and the Nation of Islam was embarrassed by Malcolm's words. They silenced him for 90 days, telling him he could not give any speeches, could not talk to the media, could not spread his message. This was a turning point for Malcolm. He realized that he could not stay in the Nation of Islam, that their teachings were too narrow, too hateful, that they were not truly fighting for justice. He realized that he needed to find his own path, his own way to fight for equality, his own way to help black people. He knew that it would be dangerous, that leaving the Nation of Islam would make him enemies, that he would face threats, that his life would be at risk, but he did not care. He knew that he had to do what was right, even if it was scary. In 1964, Malcolm left the Nation of Islam. He decided to travel to Africa and the Middle East, to learn more about Islam, to see the world beyond America, to meet people from different cultures and backgrounds. He wanted to find a way to fight for justice that was based on unity, not separation, on love, not hatred. He traveled to countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal, countries where black people were in charge, where they were proud of their heritage, where they lived in freedom. He met leaders from these countries who told him about their own struggles for independence, about their fight against colonialism, about their belief in unity and equality. Then, he went to Mecca, the holy city of Islam, where he performed the Hajj, a sacred pilgrimage that all Muslims are supposed to make if they can. The Hajj is a time of prayer, of reflection, of unity. Muslims from all over the world gather in Mecca, dressed in simple white clothes, to pray together, to worship together, to celebrate their faith. In Mecca, Malcolm saw something that changed his life forever. People of all races, all colors, all backgrounds, white, black, Asian, Arab, praying together, living together, eating together, treating each other as equals. He saw white Muslims and black Muslims hugging each other, helping each other, praying side by side. He saw that Islam was a religion of unity, of equality, of love, not a religion of hatred or separation. In that moment, Malcolm realized that his earlier beliefs were wrong. Not all white people were evil. Racism was not about race. It was about ignorance, about fear, about a system that was broken. He realized that the only way to end racism was to unite people, not to divide them, to work together, regardless of race, to build a fairer world. Malcolm converted to Sunni Islam, a more moderate branch of the religion, and he changed his name again to El-Hajj Malik el-Shahbaz, a name that reflected his new identity, his new beliefs, his new purpose. He came back to America a different man, still passionate, still determined to fight for justice, but now with a new message: unity. He believed that black people, white people, and all people of color could work together to end racism, to build a fairer world. He reached out to other civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr., a man who believed in nonviolent protest. Malcolm had once criticized King for being too soft, for asking for change nicely, for believing that white people would voluntarily give black people equality. But now he realized that they were fighting for the same thing: freedom, equality, justice. They had different methods, but they had the same goal. They began to work together, to support each other, to build a movement that would change America forever. Malcolm traveled the country, giving speeches about unity, about equality, about the need for all people to stand together. He told black people that they did not have to hate white people, that there were good white people who wanted to help, who wanted to stand with them. He told white people that they needed to stand up against racism, that they needed to use their privilege to help black people, that they needed to be allies in the fight for justice. His message was no longer about separation. It was about unity, about hope, about a better future for all people. This is the third little story within our story, my dear, a story of a young boy named Marcus, who lived in a small town in Alabama, a town where segregation was still strong, where black people were treated unfairly every day. Marcus was 10 years old, with short black hair and big, sad eyes. He had to go to a segregated school, one for black children, one for white children. His school was old and run down, with broken desks that wobbled when you sat on them, windows that were cracked, and no books. They had to share tattered textbooks that were handed down from the white school, books that were missing pages, books that were outdated. The white school, just a few miles away, had new buildings, new desks, new books, and a playground with swings, slides, and a basketball court. Marcus was sad and angry. He felt like he was not good enough, like he would never have a chance to succeed, like the world was telling him that he was less than white children. He would come home from school every day, throw his backpack on the floor, and cry. His mother, a kind woman who worked as a maid for a white family, would hug him and say, "Don't cry, Marcus. You are smart, you are strong, and you deserve better. One day, things will change." But Marcus did not believe her. He thought the world would always be unfair, that he would always be treated like he was nothing. One day, his teacher, Mrs. Johnson, took him and his classmates to a speech by Malcolm X, who was visiting their town. The speech was held in a small community center, packed with black people of all ages. Marcus sat in the front row, next to his teacher, and listened as Malcolm spoke about equality, about pride, about working together to make the world better. Malcolm talked about his own childhood, about the struggles he had faced, about how he had changed, about how unity was the key to change. He said, "Every child, no matter the color of their skin, deserves to go to a good school, to have new books, to be treated with respect. Every child deserves to dream, and to have the chance to make those dreams come true." After the speech, Malcolm knelt down and talked to Marcus. He put his hand on Marcus's shoulder, looked him in the eyes, and said, "You are important, young man. You have the power to change the world. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Never let anyone make you feel small. You are strong, you are smart, you are worthy, and you have a voice that deserves to be heard." Marcus felt a spark of hope that day, a spark that he had never felt before. He looked up at Malcolm, and he smiled, for the first time in a long time. He went back to school, studied hard. Even though he had no books, he borrowed books from the library, he asked his teacher for help, he worked late at night by the light of a candle. He realized that he could make a difference, that he could change his own life, that he could help change the world. Eventually, Marcus became a teacher, working in a desegregated school, helping other black children realize their potential, helping them find their voice, helping them believe that they could achieve anything they set their minds to. He never forgot Malcolm's words, and he passed them on to every child he taught. You are important. You have the power to change the world. Malcolm's new message made him many enemies, especially within the Nation of Islam. They felt betrayed by him, betrayed because he had abandoned their teachings, betrayed because he was working with white people, betrayed because he was working with leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who they saw as soft and weak. They saw him as a traitor, a man who had turned his back on his own people, a man who deserved to be punished. Throughout 1964, Malcolm received constant threats, threats in the mail, threats over the phone, threats in person. His car was bombed. Someone planted a bomb in his car while he was inside a restaurant, but he managed to escape unharmed, just in time. He received hate mail, letters filled with cruel words, letters threatening to kill him and his family. People called his house at all hours of the night, shouting threats, telling him he would die. The FBI was watching him, monitoring his every move. They followed him wherever he went, they tapped his phone, they read his mail, they tried to find a reason to arrest him. But Malcolm did not back down. He knew that his message was important, that he was fighting for something bigger than himself, that he was fighting for the future of black people, for the future of all people. He said, "I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of not living up to my potential. I'm afraid of not fighting for what's right. If I die fighting for justice, then I die happy, knowing that I did everything I could to make the world a better place." He continued to give speeches, to travel, to spread his message of unity and equality, even though he knew his life was at risk. He spent time with his family, holding his daughters, telling them he loved them, making memories with them, because he knew that he might not have much time left. On February 14, 1965, just a week before his death, Malcolm's house in Queens, New York, was set on fire. He and his family, Betty and their 6 daughters, were inside, sleeping, when they smelled smoke. Malcolm woke up, grabbed his daughters, and rushed them out of the house, with Betty close behind. The fire spread quickly, engulfing the house in flames, all their belongings, all their memories, all the things they had worked so hard for, gone in an instant. The fire was set by members of the Nation of Islam, but Malcolm did not let it stop him. He did not let fear take over. He stood outside, watching his house burn, holding his daughters close, and he said, "They can burn my house, but they cannot burn my spirit. They can try to kill me, but they cannot kill my message. I will keep fighting, no matter what." The next day, he gave a speech, his voice still strong, his passion still alive, telling people about the fire, about the threats, but also about his hope for the future. He said, "We will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced. We will keep fighting for justice, for equality, for unity. We will keep going, no matter what." He knew that his time might be short, but he was determined to make every moment count, to spread his message as far and as wide as possible. On February 21, 1965, Malcolm was supposed to give a speech at the Audubon Ballroom in Manhattan, New York. The ballroom was packed with people, black men, women, and children, all there to hear him speak, all there to hear his message of unity and hope. Malcolm walked onto the stage, wearing a dark suit, his hair neatly combed, his face calm and determined. He greeted the crowd, and they cheered, shouting his name, "Malcolm X! Malcolm X! Malcolm X!" He smiled, waved, and was about to speak when chaos broke out. Someone in the audience shouted, "Nigger! Keep your hands out of my pocket." It was a distraction, a trick to get Malcolm and his bodyguards to let their guard down. Malcolm and his bodyguards tried to calm the crowd, tried to figure out what was happening, but before they could, 3 men stood up from the audience and started shooting. The sound of gunshots echoed through the ballroom, loud and terrifying. People screamed, ran for cover, tried to get out of the way. Malcolm was hit multiple times, and he fell to the stage, his body crumpling to the floor. His bodyguards tackled the gunman, but it was too late. Malcolm was taken to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, but the wounds were too severe, the damage too great. At 3:30 in the afternoon, Malcolm X was pronounced dead. He was only 39 years old, too young, too soon, taken from the world before he could see the change he had fought so hard for. The world was shocked by Malcolm's death. Thousands of people attended his funeral, mourning the loss of a man who had fought so hard for justice, who had changed so much, who had given hope to so many. Black people, white people, people of all races gathered together to grieve, to honor his memory, to celebrate his life. His wife, Betty, was heartbroken. She had lost the love of her life, the father of her children, her partner in the fight for justice. But she did not give up. She continued his work, raising their 6 daughters, fighting for equality, spreading his message of unity and hope. She started a foundation in Malcolm's name, dedicated to helping black children, to promoting education, to fighting racism. His daughters grew up to be strong, brave women, following in their father's footsteps, fighting for justice, for equality, for the world he had dreamed of. His message lived on, inspiring millions of people around the world to stand up against racism, to fight for justice, to believe in the power of unity. People began to see Malcolm not as a man of hatred, but as a man of courage, a man of change, a man who had the courage to admit when he was wrong, to grow, to evolve, to fight for what was right. My dear, change is not easy. It does not happen overnight. It takes time, it takes courage, it takes people who are willing to stand up, to speak out, to fight, even when it is scary. After Malcolm's death, there were still many struggles. Racism still existed, and black people still faced unfair treatment. They were still discriminated against, still denied jobs, still denied housing, still treated like they were less than human. But Malcolm's life showed us that one person can make a difference. He showed us that even when the world is cruel, even when you face impossible odds, even when you are scared, you can stand up, you can speak out, you can change things. He showed us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting even when you are afraid. He showed us that people can change, that we can grow, that we can learn from our mistakes, that we can become better. He showed us that unity is the key to change, that when people of all races, all backgrounds, all beliefs work together, we can build a fairer, kinder, better world. Malcolm's story did not end with his death. His message inspired the civil rights movement of the 1960s, which led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, laws that made segregation illegal, that gave black people the right to vote, that made the world a little fairer. His message inspired people like Nelson Mandela, who fought against apartheid in South Africa, who spent 27 years in prison for his beliefs, who never gave up hope, who eventually became the president of South Africa, uniting his country. His message inspired Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, in 1955, sparking the Montgomery bus boycott, a key moment in the civil rights movement. His message inspired Martin Luther King Jr., who continued to fight for nonviolent change, who gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, who dreamed of a world where people would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. His message inspired ordinary people, like you and me, to stand up against injustice, to be kind to one another, to believe that we all deserve to be free, to be equal, to be loved. His message inspired children, like Marcus, to believe in themselves, to work hard, to chase their dreams, to make a difference. His message is still alive today, in the people who fight against racism, in the people who stand up for equality, in the people who believe in a better world. Remember, my dear, freedom is a gift. It is not something that is given to us. It is something that we fight for, something that we protect, something that we pass on to the next generation. Malcolm fought for that freedom, with every fiber of his being, with every word he spoke, with every action he took. He fought for the freedom of black people, for the freedom of all people, for a world where no one is judged by the color of their skin, where everyone is treated with respect, where everyone has the chance to dream and to achieve those dreams. And now it is our turn to continue his fight. We can fight by being kind, by standing up for those who are being treated unfairly, by speaking out against racism, by believing that every person is equal, no matter the color of their skin, their religion, their gender, or where they come from. We can fight by teaching our children about courage, about equality, about unity, about the importance of standing up for what is right. We can fight by remembering Malcolm's story, by honoring his memory, by living his message. Think about your own life, my dear. You have the right to go to school, to learn, to be happy. You have the right to be treated with respect, to be loved, to be free. You have the right to play with any child, regardless of their skin color. You have the right to dream big, to chase those dreams, to be anything you want to be. That is because of people like Malcolm X, people who fought for those rights, people who refused to give up, people who gave their lives so that we could live in a better world. Never take that freedom for granted. Never forget the struggles of those who came before us, who gave us the world we live in today. Never forget that you have the power to make a difference, that you have the power to change the world, just like Malcolm did. You may be small, my dear, but your voice is powerful, your heart is kind, and your courage is strong. You can be a force for good, you can be a light in the darkness, you can be the change you want to see in the world. Now, my dear, we are back to this quiet night. The moon is still shining, soft and gentle, through the window. The leaves are still rustling, a quiet lullaby. Your breath is still steady, calm, and peaceful. The story of Malcolm X is a story of courage, of change, of hope. It is a story of a man who faced pain and cruelty, who made mistakes, who changed, who grew, who fought for what was right. It is a story that reminds us that we all have the power to make a difference, that we all have the power to change the world. It is a story that reminds us that love is stronger than hate, that unity is stronger than division, that hope is stronger than despair. As you drift off to sleep, remember this: you are loved, you are important, and you have the courage to be a force for good. Remember Malcolm's words, remember his courage, remember his hope. Let them wrap around you, like a cozy blanket, keeping you safe, keeping you warm. Sweet dreams, my dear. May your dreams be filled with hope, with courage, with freedom. May you dream of a world where everyone is equal, where everyone is treated with respect, where everyone is loved. May you dream of a world where Malcolm's message has been fulfilled, where racism is a thing of the past, where unity and kindness rule. And may you wake up tomorrow ready to be the change you want to see in the world. For you, my baby, are capable of great things. You are the future, and the future is bright. You have the power to make Malcolm's dream come true, to build a better world for yourself, for your family, for everyone. I love you, my dear. Sleep well, and know that you are never alone.